Today I have my 4 family members here watching me on a call. They're going to be on this computer screen here watching me today do my speech. So, okay. Imagine one of our country's largest parks losing its natural beauty due to increased infrastructure and border policies that are being in place in order to take away that biodiversity and ecology. Us as Texans, that is a problem that we are facing with right now in the modern day through the loss of habitat and protection acts in Big Bend National Park, which is one of the last intact desert ecosystems in America on a multi-100,000 acre scale. Now, us as Texans, we all gain from Big Bend National Park being preserved and conserved as a national park. Whether it's just the natural beauty, the ability to go there and take it all in, soak it all in, the importance of the wildlife there, the balance that it keeps within the ecosystem, and even just the sense of responsibility is something that is genuinely good for us as Texans. Now, I have some credibility upon this topic because I'm actually studying geology at WIU, minoring in zoology, so this concept is very important and dear to me, and it is something that needs to be not necessarily enjoyed and loved by everybody, which is, the geology and the wildlife. That doesn't have to be everyone's favorite subject, favorite thing to do, but they do have to know the importance of it and why we need to protect those things in our country, but mainly right now my emphasis is on the National Park of Big Bend in Texas. So, in order to present our conservation efforts, we need to go over why Big Bend is worth saving and why we need to in place policies to keep Big Bend safe. Now, the Texas government should not be voting for policies that harm the ecosystem and biodiversity of Big Bend National Parks just because they would rather in place infrastructure and essentially gain selfish profit out of it, which is not as important as keeping and protecting our species in Big Bend. So, Big Bend, the reason number one why we need to protect Big Bend is because of the species and ecosystem that revolves in that area. For me, I'm going to focus on the animals in that area. We could dive into plants later and their special implications, but for me, I have a couple of favorites that are also very important to the ecosystem. The black American bear, the Mexican long-nosed bat, and the Texas horned lizard. Those are 3 common species in the area that are all facing endangered status within the area because of the policies that are being in place by places or organizations such as the U.S. National Guard or National Security. But anyways, these species are super important for seed dispersal, pollination, and even keeping the balance of the ecosystem in terms of the food chain that we all know of. Now, my favorite example is the Mexican long-nosed bat. You wouldn't think of a bat as such an important role player in pollination because we all know the story of bees and why they're so important to the earth in terms of pollinating flowers and dispersing plant pollination in order to reproduce. Bats, that is their main role in desert environments. That is an ecosystem that is hard to have animals live in that environment because of the intense conditions. Bats play a huge role in that condition or in that area of pollination, which is why we need to protect these sort of species through policies and voting people into office that care about these decisions that are being made about the infrastructure being built in Big Bend National Park. Now, the reason why we need to protect these species is because once they're gone, they're very hard to recover. Now that we understand what is at stake a little bit, we should go into what we can do as Texans to support this park by voting for policies and voting for people who care. Now, there are proposals now by the people in charge that
take away acts of wildlife protection because they want to go in and speed up the process of infrastructure and border and building for the border, as well as removing oil from the earth to help fund oil companies, which keeps a lot of these companies and organizations funded. Now, in that region, we need to take away this importance or this hurry in order to build so much infrastructure, because it's not that important. We don't need to be building out on that land. We need to leave it to the animals that deserve it and accept that that is one of the natural beauties of our state, and leave it as it is, because conservation does matter in that area to keep that system balanced, reduce our impacts to climate change, which obviously, if you're unaware, we are in the middle of a mass extinction event because of the ecological loss from climate change that is sped up by our infrastructure. Now that we know about the reasons why and who we should vote for in our Texas government, which is people that care about these conservation acts, we can now review that Big Bend is an important and beautiful place for us to protect, and we need to put conservation laws in order to protect this place. And if we protect Big Bend, it is likely one of our last large ecosystems that is standing in America, and we need to preserve it by protecting the species and putting people into office. Now, just remember, if you've ever been to Big Bend Park and you remember the beauty of it, imagine losing that for yourself, and not only for yourself, but also your children and their children in the future. And that is why we need to protect Big Bend National Park. Thank you.